Welcome everybody. Do my thing right here, Saved by Nature. And so my name is Mr. Richard. I am the founder and executive director of Saved by Nature. I started Saved by Nature because nature saved my life. Just like you, when I was younger, I started going to the Boys and Girls Club when I was like in 5th grade. And everything was going great while I was in the Boys and Girls Club and in sports and things like that. But unfortunately, I grew up in a very bad neighborhood and stopped going to the Boys and Girls Club. And still remember the time when Fred told me that I was going the wrong direction and I needed to stay into the Boys and Girls Club. I'm alumni, Boys and Girls, and so I was sitting in the same place that you were at. And I remember going to at summer camp, the Boys and Girls Club was able to go to Yosemite, but unfortunately not able to do that anymore. And so one of the reasons why I started this program is to introduce you to nature, because a lot of you come from inner city areas and don't get to be introduced to nature. So that's why we're here today. We have a 5-day, summer day camp, if you will, and it's virtual. If you didn't join us yesterday and it's your first day joining us, we'll be doing this for the rest of the week. And today we're at Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge, and it's a beautiful little hidden gem in Alviso near the bay, which a lot of people don't know about. But it's very important that we introduce you to things like this so that you can come out and enjoy it on your own or with your family. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you staff for setting this up and being here today as well. We have Hope and we have Rachel, and they will be our presenters today. Go for it.
All right, welcome everybody. My name is Hope Presley, and this is...
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Kawili.
And we're both rangers here at Don Edwards, San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge. And so what we're going to do today is we are going to walk along our boardwalk trail through the salt marsh, which is our main habitat here at Don Edwards. And then we'll end up on the levee looking over another habitat called the salt pond. We are going to be using the Junior Refuge Ranger booklet as we go along today. They are created in a format where you can do them along with us, but you can also do them on your own after we're done. When you're at home, you can finish it up. There's plenty of activities that you can do with your friends and family after the program. So to get started, first, I'm going to ask you a question. What do we do at the wildlife refuge? And if you have your book with you, you could open it up and turn to page 2 at the top. It says, what is a refuge? So think about, what might we do here? We do have lots of animals, birds.
Alum Rock, you save animals.
Yeah, so we do save or protect animals, but we do so by protecting their habitat. So their habitat is their home, just like we all have homes or houses, animals have habitat. So there's 4 things that an animal needs in order to have a successful habitat or healthy habitat. And those are food, water, shelter, and space. And so if you can see behind me here in the marsh, they have plenty of open space to move around and really use this habitat for everything that they need. Why Don Edwards was established and who organizes Don Edwards. So we were established almost 50 years ago in 1972. And we were established as a national wildlife refuge, which is managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is a federal agency. So we're run by the federal or the United States government. But this is an open space, public land. So anyone can come here. It's free to come. All of our programs are free. So this is really your land and your space that you get to come to. We were established to protect migratory birds. So as we go on our walk today around the boardwalk, we're going to see lots and lots of birds that come out here and use this habitat. We're situated along the Pacific Flyway. So birds have flyways that are basically like highways. So I'm sure you've all, being from the Bay Area, have driven down a highway like 880. And there's lots and lots of cars going down multiple lanes. That's basically what birds use, but it's like an invisible highway that's up in the sky. And they travel from north to south and south to north, depending on the season. But they have to stop along the way, just like we do. We have to stop, fill up for gas, get a snack, take a rest. You can't go on a super long road trip without stopping, and neither can the birds. So this refuge is just one place that they stop along the Pacific Flyway. And here at Don Edwards, we have over 300 species of birds that use these habitats. So our first habitat that we're going to walk through is the salt marsh. The salt marsh is a wetland. And so as we walk along, you're gonna see that there's lots of vegetation out here, but there's also these channels of water. And so a wetland is a transitional habitat. It's a combination of both land or vegetation and water. And these habitats, wetlands, or this one specifically, the salt marsh, is super important for wildlife. Not only do they use it as their home, but they also use it to reproduce. So we have lots of nesting birds out here. Hopefully we'll get to see some juveniles or some chicks today. And they also use it as a really rich feeding resource. So lots of birds and other animals as well will come down into the marsh to find food. It's also beneficial for us too. So down here, we're at the south end of San Francisco Bay. And these marsh habitats, or these wetlands, help protect us from flooding. So if there was a really high tide or if a storm came in, these marshes help protect us so that our communities don't get flooded. They also are really high oxygen producers. So a lot of times, I'm sure you guys have all learned that trees produce a lot of oxygen. That is totally true, but there's also some studies that say that marshes can actually produce more oxygen. So they're really, really important for us too. And that's why we're here to protect them for wildlife and for us. So we're gonna start going on our walk around the boardwalk. We're gonna stop a few times. We're gonna hear from me. You're also gonna hear from Rachel. And feel free, if you guys have any questions, to please type them in, raise your hand. All the water that comes into the wetland here is from the bay. And so water came into this area and then it dried up. And so what we see left behind is actually salt, because the water that is coming into this habitat is salt water. It comes from the bay, which ultimately comes from the ocean. And so when water evaporates on a warm day, just like today, the salt is left behind. And so you can see here, it's actually pretty thick salt, and it's nice and sparkly.
Good question.
That's a great question. So this salt you probably don't want to use on your food just how it is, but there is salt that is harvested from the bay that we do use on our food. One thing that makes this refuge really unique is that we're an urban refuge. So we're really close to the cities, we're really close to large populations of people. And even though that has a lot of advantages for us, sometimes that can be destructive for the wildlife and the habitat here. So, for example, right next to the refuge here, you might be able to see there's a golden hill, and it's flat on the top, and you might be able to see there's actually some trucks driving on the top of it. This is a landfill, and we have 5 landfills that I can actually see from the boardwalk. Sometimes, unfortunately, these landfills do affect the wildlife. For example, I'm sure you've all seen gulls, they like to go into the city, they're on the beach, they're in parks, they're scavenger birds. And so they will go over to the landfill and they'll pick up trash, bring it over, they might eat it, and it's not good for them. They shouldn't be eating trash.
See that, boys and girls, right there? Somebody's Slurpee. Ooh, it's nice out here. Ooh, it's nice out here. Giraffe neck. Doo-doo. Okay, that'll work.
All right, so what we're seeing here is some of that decomposing algae that we talked about that makes that lovely sulfur smell. Algae grows mostly in the beginning of the summer when it starts getting warm, because the warm and the sun and then a lower water level creates the perfect conditions for that algae growth. That brown stuff, and that's the decomposing algae. And so that'll continue through the fall, actually. And then once it starts raining, we get into winter, then the algae is pretty much all decomposed, and the water will be nice and clear and blue again. The reason that we're seeing it accumulating right here or building up is because of the wind.
Check it out. Can you see anything moving in there? I can. Like little bubbles. There must be the aquatic insects of some sort. All right, let's roll.
Right, everyone. So we're going to stop here to talk about the plants that live in the salt marsh. But first, did anyone see anything cool while we're getting here? Any observations about the habitat or plants? What you might have noticed on our way here as well are the plants are very low to the ground. So they're very short. This is a low-lying habitat compared to the trees that we have in the background. Try to look at all those trees and shrubs. In the upland area there, you can see that they're way taller than the plants that we have in the salt marsh. So why do you think these plants are so short in the salt marsh? Any ideas? Raise your hand if you think that these plants are short because there's a lot of animals eating them. Maybe that's why they're short. Raise your hand if you think these plants are just lazy and they don't want to grow.
Who thinks plants are lazy? Raise your hand.
All right, raise your hand if you think these plants are so short because they are in the salt marsh. They're dealing with salt water.
I got some hands.
That's cool. So yes, these plants are very short, close to the ground because they are dealing with salt water. So they're not lazy, they're actually working very hard to get rid of the salt. And there are animals here, but there's not that many that they're growing so short to the ground. So there are about 2 to 3 plants that live in the salt marsh. I'm going to talk about 2 main plants. So the first one we have is called pickleweed. See that? You see that segmented? Looks like there's little pickles attached to it.
I like pickles.
Who likes pickles? So one of our animals that live here, pickleweed is the main diet. Pickleweed lives in the salt marsh. It has to deal with salt water. It has to get rid of the salt because a lot of plants can't tolerate too much salt. It messes up their health system. So what pickleweed does to get rid of salt is that it pushes all the salt up to its tips, and then the tips will eventually turn an orange-red color. You might be able to see some as we walk by. And once all the salt accumulates at the very top and turns red, it'll drop off. So that's how pickleweed gets rid of salt. Pretty cool. All right, this is pickleweed. Remember that? We'll talk about it. It's called alkaline heath. So it's this short, shrubby plant. You can see that it has beautiful little purple flowers, and those bloom usually in the summer. So it's nice that we can see that now. So alkaline heath gets rid of salt just the way we do. So how do humans get rid of salt from our bodies? What do we do? Any guesses? Yes, so we sweat. That's how we get rid of salt, and that's how alkaline heath gets rid of salt. And maybe if I move it around a little bit, green side.
Let me zoom in. Hold it still, and then I'm gonna zoom in, and then turn. Is that a spider web on it though?
There's a
Yeah. Sorry, I'm the short attention span.
So those are our two main plants that live in the salt marsh. So they provide habitat for the animals that live here. They provide home, they provide shelter, and they provide food. So we'll talk about that later on. And as Hope mentioned earlier, there's this dense vegetation. As you can see, very compact. It's like a blanket of green. So with all those plants, it provides us and the animals with a lot of oxygen. That's very important, and that's another reason why we protect this habitat.
That's looking back at you guys, back at kind of the city. That's the Diablo Range. There's the trees. That's where we just came from. Ooh, a pelican. Nice. There's that little squeaker. Okay, go for it.
All right, so these are our black-necked stilts. They're one of our shorebirds, and there is a family of them. Oh, you can still see them. Moved a little bit. There's a family of them, and so as we walk right now along the boardwalk, so we're gonna walk, and so keep your eye out. Look for some movement that's in the water, and this is a whole family of them. So you're gonna see 2 adults, and I think it's 4 juveniles, but they're old enough now that they look really similar to the adults. They just might be a little bit smaller and not quite as dark.
All right, give me a thumbs up if you want to see them. Okay, all right, let's roll. I want to see them.
As we walk, if you just want to focus on them. All right, so these 3 birds that you're seeing right here, these are the juveniles that are in the water. The parents are a little farther out. They're the ones that's making all the noise because they're trying to distract us and keep us away from their chicks. They're trying to protect them. Again, these are shorebirds, and they have really, really long legs. So we do have a picture we'll show you once we get to the next stop, and where you'll actually be able to see how long their legs are. Their legs are super long out here in the marsh and look for food. So I think we can move a little bit closer. We'll see if we can.
Let's see if I get that one over there with the long legs.
There he is. You can see him walking. He's right there at the tip of the vegetation, going into the water.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And so you might see him also dip his head down and dip his beak into the water. He's pulling out some mud creatures like snails, clams, worms, any little bugs that live in the mud underneath the water. He can poke his beak into and pull out that food. So I hope you guys were able to get a good look at those black-necked stilts. But we do have a picture right here where they are closer up, so we'll get a zoom in on that for you. They have these really long legs, and their legs are this nice bright pink or red color, so they really stand out. And they have this long pointy beak, which again allows them to poke into the mud and pull out any creatures that are there. right here, you can see this. This is when this is what the chicks look like. So right after they're born, they're really, really tiny. They're this white, fluffy. They have some brown and black on them. They look like little cotton balls that are running around on stilts. They're really cute. The ones that we just saw are juveniles. So they have more of this black and white pattern, but they are a little bit lighter and a little smaller than the adults. Remember at the beginning, I told you that we have almost 300 species of birds that come to the refuge. So I'm going to show you a few other shorebirds that we have. One of them is our American avocet. And so this avocet looks very similar to our black-necked stilts. You can see it also has a black and white pattern on its body, but its head has this nice rusty orange color, and then its beak is swooped up at the end. And so they actually use that. It kind of looks like they're sweeping the bottom of the marsh. They move their head back and forth, and that helps disturb the mud underneath so they can find those mud creatures within the mud. So that's a different type of feeding technique. Even though they're a similar size shorebird to our black-necked stilts, they feed in a slightly different way. But they're still considered a shorebird. And then we have these little tiny, tiny birds. They're called Western Sandpipers. They're really cute. They're like smaller than your hand, probably. They're really tiny. And these are also a shorebird, but they have specially adapted beaks and legs. So not only are their legs really long so they can walk in the water, but they're also really skinny and they're really lightweight, so they can just walk super easy across the mud.
Good question.
All right. So again, this is our Western Sandpiper. And you can see, even though this photo is of it really close up, this bird is actually really, really small. But it's also a shorebird. And you can see it does have a pointed beak. And it has these skinny, long legs. Not as long as our avocet or our black-necked stilt, but still pretty long. And they do a similar feeding technique. They poke their beaks into the mud, but they actually stay in different areas of the marsh. So just like we saw our black-necked stilts, they have the really long legs, so they can go farther out into the water, whereas our sandpipers have shorter legs, so they have to stay really close to the vegetation along the edge where it's not as deep. And so that decreases competition because all of these shorebirds are eating the same foods, but in different areas and in different ways. Right. And then we have two more shorebirds that we see out here pretty often in the marsh. We have our great egrets, and you might have seen these. These birds are pretty common in our area. You can also find them in like your local parks. Every once in a while, maybe one shows up in your backyard, but they're pretty big. These are a lot bigger than our black-necked stilts or our avocets. They have really long legs, a nice big white body. They really have these beautiful feathers that kind of fluff out. It's called their plumage. And then they have a really, really long orange beak. And they eat more of the fish and larger animals that are out here in the marsh, opposed to those tiny little mud creatures that our other shorebirds are eating. And then we have one that's really similar. So it looks almost the same, but there's a few things that are different about it. This is called a snowy egret. And it's a little bit smaller than our gray egret. And it also has these yellow feet. And so it actually uses its feet to feed or as bait. So if any of you have ever been fishing, you might put bait on your hook. And so the snowy egret actually will wiggle its feet in the mud, so it kind of looks like worms. And fish will come up and nibble on the bird's feet, and then the snowy egret will snatch them right out of the water. And they trick them so that they can get a nice meal. They also will disturb the mud, kind of like our avocet does with its beak, but the snowy egret does it with his feet. And so he'll walk around the mud and it looks like he's dancing. He swishes his feet around on the top of the mud to loosen up all those mud creatures. So they kind of will eat both. They're in between. They'll eat mud creatures, but they'll also eat fish. So those are all of our shorebirds. So again, shorebirds have a pointy beak, really skinny, kind of light legs so that allow them to walk around. Does anyone have any questions about shorebirds before we move on? We're going to talk about one more type of bird.
Any questions?
If you have your Junior Ranger book in front of you, you can turn to page 10 and 11, and that'll give you some closer-up photos of the birds and a nice activity that you can use to count birds. If you go out to a park or somewhere in your neighborhood, you can also practice counting birds. Okay. So the last type of bird that we're going to talk about that uses the marsh are our waterfowl. And so you might all recognize these birds here. These are mallards. And there's two different colors of mallards. Do you guys know why there's two different colors?
It's a male and a female.
Yes. Do you know which one is the male and which one's the female?
Yeah, I know. The female's the green one and the male's the brown one.
So the female is the brown one. She's this really like brown and tan color. And then the male is actually the one that has the bright green head. He has a nice like white, kind of looks like he's wearing maybe a tie or a necklace, little ring around his neck. And then he has brown on his chest. So why do you think it would be the male duck that would be more colorful than the female duck? What would be the adaptation for that?
I can't hear you. Say it again.
You attract the mate.
Yes, so the male has this nice colorful green head because they want to attract the females for mating. So breeding season for most of our birds here, and most animals, not all of them, but most animals breed in the spring. And so ducks actually arrive here at the refuge. If you remember, I told you they travel along the Pacific Flyway. And so they'll stop here at the refuge. And these ducks actually stop here for a long time. They could stay like 6 to 8 months here at the refuge. They get here in the fall. They find a mate. They spend some time together, get to know each other, you know. They eat. They find a good spot where they want to have their nest. And then in the spring, they'll actually create a nest, and then they'll lay some eggs, and they'll actually alternate who stays with the nest, who protects it and keeps it warm, and then they'll have little ducklings. And so if you come out here in the spring, you might be lucky enough to see some ducklings walking along the road or swimming out in the marsh. They usually swim in a line, so the mom will be in the front, and all the little chicks are behind her, and then the dad is in the back, making sure nobody gets lost. So those are our mallards. These are really, really common duck. You'll probably see them in some city and local parks too. And then our other species of duck that we get a lot of here is our northern shoveler. And so you might say, hey, that looks very similar to our mallard. And they do. They also have this green iridescent head for the same purpose. They want to attract females. So this picture doesn't have a female northern shoveler, but she looks very similar to the mallard female, or to a female mallard. And they have this nice flat black beak that looks like a shovel, and they actually use it like a shovel. So they also feed out here in the marsh, just like our our shorebirds do. But they feed in, again, a different way. So they actually use their beak like a shovel or a spoon, and they'll scoop up like the edge of the mud and look for those mud creatures. And they can filter out any water as well out of their beak. So these are some of our water birds that are out here in the marsh. And you can tell that they're different than shorebirds because they have this nice thick beak. But then they also, which you can kind of see in this photo, if you look at their bright orange feet, they are webbed. And so even though they do walk around and they can walk in the mud, they can also swim. So they use their webbed feet to swim. Whereas our shorebirds technically don't swim. They walk. Sometimes it looks like they're swimming when they're out in the middle of the water, like our black-necked stilts, but they're just walking. They're not swimming. So our ducks or our waterfowl, they can swim in the water. And of course, we have lots and lots of other species of birds out here too, but those are our main. You can see him walking in the water. He's poking his head and his beak down into the mud. And we can't see what he's eating because it's too small, but we can tell that they're eating something.
Oh, what are those? Pinch to zoom.
We can actually see, oh, there they are. You can see some bird tracks. And so you can actually see, it looks like they have 3 toes that go out. And so that is probably one of our egrets because they're pretty big tracks. This is another way you can see what type of wildlife is in a habitat. Even if you don't see the animals themselves, you might see signs of them. So seeing their tracks or their footprints is one way to tell what types of animals use this habitat.
About 2 more animals that live in the salt marsh habitat. They are endemic to the San Francisco Bay Area, so they only live here and nowhere else in the world. And they are also endangered. So what does endangered mean? Are there a lot? Raise your hand. Endangered mean a lot of animals? No. Does endangered mean not a lot? There are few. On a hand? Awesome. Yes, so endangered means there's not a lot of these animals. And so maybe you're asking why. So like I said, they're endemic to this habitat, the salt marsh, and we've lost about 80% of our salt marsh habitat. So with that habitat loss, we've also lost a lot of these animals. The first animal I'm going to talk about is a bird. It's called the California Ridgeway rail. It is the size of a chicken, and unfortunately, it also tastes like chicken. So back in the day, people actually used to eat this bird and put it on their menus. So that's another reason why initially this bird became endangered and its population started to go down. So we call this bird Callie for short. Callie is nocturnal, so unfortunately we won't see it today. It eats things like fish, clams. It stays in the vegetation. It's very elusive, very secretive. It doesn't like to be seen. So it hides in these plants in the marsh. It also can fly, but it doesn't fly very far. It only flies to get away from the tide, to get away from other predators. So that is our California Ridgeways rail. The second animal I'm going to talk about is called...
All right, everybody go. Go. Aww.
Aw, so cute. This is the salt marsh harvest mouse. We call it lovingly Salty for short. So Salty is also nocturnal, just like Callie. And you can see in the picture, it has these very large eyes. So it uses its large eyes to collect more light at night so it can see. And it has these cupped ears. So with the cupped ears, they can hear distances, so they can see, or sorry, they can hear if prey is coming. So Salty is about the size of your thumb plus a tail. What? So small, right? Look at how small it is compared to the pickleweed we saw earlier. So Salty is can also swim. It can swim in the salt water. It can also drink salt water. Both Salty and Callie can drink salt water because they have a special gland in their body to filter the salt out. Salty eats pickleweed mostly. It makes its home out of pickleweed, so pickleweed is what it's about for Salty. These are our two endangered animals. Salty specifically is endangered not only because of habitat loss, but it only lives for 9 months. So that's not a lot of time to find someone special, make a family. So that's another reason why Salty is endangered. And so these two animals are another reason why we protect this habitat at the refuge, to make sure they can survive and they can prosper for us to enjoy.
I like that. I like it. It was salty. I think we should do like a 1, 2, 3 salty. Anyways, we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do like a bye.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. And so I know that we're running out of time here. And so thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow, we will be with Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority, because I know Valley Water switched. And so I believe we'll be doing that. We'll be going over to Penitencia Creek. Hope, Rachel?
Yeah, thank you all for coming. We hope that you enjoyed this virtual walk. Don't forget about your junior ranger books. You can take those home, keep doing the activities, share it with your family. Tonight you can share with them what you learned in this awesome place that you guys can come visit. We are open. The trails are open, so you can come out and go for a hike here. We have a few different access points, but Alviso is where we're at today. So please feel free to come and go for a hike, and hopefully once we return, we'll be able to see you in person, and maybe you can come join us for a real in-person program.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Make sure to come look for Salty. Your own time, it'd be great. And if you find Salty, send me a picture, and you just might get a prize.
Bye. Bye.